Hey guys, how's it going? It's Rob Sutton. I'm back in the office after being in New York City for a week. And today we're going to talk about how to shoot time-lapse video. So the entire plan I had on this trip was to go to a couple locations and actually do this entire tutorial shoot out on the field. Unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate all that much. It was extremely cold, extremely windy. I mean, it was so windy I even had to hold the tripod while taking some of these shots. So guess what? We're taking care of it here instead of out on the street. But I have the shots, we're gonna go over them. Let's take a look. But before we do that, what is a time-lapse video? Everyone knows what a time-lapse video is, right? You're trying to speed up time and give that really cool look that gives you that little jittery bit of feel as you cover a scene over an extended period of time in a short clip. One thing to remember is video is all a collection of frames. So whether you're shooting at 120 frames per second, 60 frames per second, 24 frames a second, it's a sequence of images that creates a video. The more information you have, the more you can slow it down. So if you're looking at 120 frames a second, when you bring that down to 24 frames a second in your timeline, there's more information to work with. That's why you get slow motion. You can take those 120 frames and stack them up in 24 per second increments. Now with time lapse, we're trying to do the opposite. So where you see frames per second in video, a sequence of images per second, and time lapse, we're going to be taking images in a sequence of seconds at a time, which I like to call seconds per frame. So how do we do this? Well, one, you pick up one of these. Use this for a lot of different things in photography, but it really comes in handy when it comes to time lapses because it automatically controls your camera and takes the picture every couple seconds that you set. This is the cheap version. I'll link it down on Amazon. Don't buy the Nikon, Canon branded ones. They're too expensive. You get these cheap versions from Amazon, which are probably made in China. China specials, but they're really cheap and they work just as well. Only thing to watch out for is these battery covers come off really easily. The next thing you're gonna need is a tripod because you want the camera not to move. A couple little tips that I use to get a really good time-lapse video. Once you get your scene all set and your camera in focus, turn the lens to manual focus. One of the things that can really ruin your shot is if the camera starts hunting for focal points. Ideally, you're gonna be shooting these at f9, f11, f7, somewhere where that aperture range is getting most of the field in focus anyway. Once you have your focus point set, it shouldn't matter for the rest of the scene. But what will happen when the remote starts taking over is that if it's hunting for that focus point, you'll start missing shots if it can't get it within that time frame. The other thing to consider is how long you're shooting this time lapse. It's gonna use up a lot of images and it's gonna use up a lot of battery. If you're gonna be shooting a time lapse for an hour or two, you need to have extra batteries and extra memory cards. You can fill up a 32 gig memory card pretty quickly shooting raw. So let's go a couple of places in New York City, capture some footage, and then come back and edit it and show you how to put it all together. So here we are back at home. It's time to bring them into Lightroom, do some adjustments, do some exporting, and then bring them into Adobe Premiere. Here's the sequence from the first scene that we visited at the Flatiron Building. There are 244 images in the sequence. So what we're gonna do is pick this first image in the sequence, go to Develop, and make some adjustments. It's easier to do this now in Lightroom than it would be to color grade this in Premiere. I'm just gonna do some simple edits here in the interest of time. Now to synchronize these settings across all of the images, we're gonna go back to Library. We have our selected image here is image number 1, and it's the one we applied the edits to. We're gonna scroll down, select all the images in the sequence, right click, develop settings, sync settings. Click check all, synchronize. That is gonna take all of the develop settings that you did to that first image and apply it to all of them in the sequence. One thing to keep in mind when you're looking at the entire sequence, you're gonna wanna spot check images in the sequence to make sure all of the settings actually apply to all images. In this case, we were shooting at the same time of day over a short period of time, so the lighting conditions didn't change all that much. If you're doing a longer time lapse that goes over different lighting conditions, especially a sunrise or sunset, you might have to group images and do individual adjustments to those images to make sure the exposure and adjustments are consistent across the entire length of the sequence. After you've done that, we're gonna select all, File, Export, name the folder Time-Lapse 1, Quality 100, and we do not want to resize the fit. We are going to export these at full res. In part 2, I'm going to talk about why exactly we did this, but for right now, just know we need as much data as we can possibly handle. So we do not want to downsize this to 1080p or even 4K. We want to deal with full res images and don't constrain ourselves to just the resolution we'll be working with in our timeline. Now that we have all of our images exported, we're ready to bring them into Adobe Premiere and let it do its thing. Luckily, Adobe makes this crazy simple to get this done. Right-click, Import in your new project. We're going to navigate to our Time-Lapse 1. And as you can see, all of our images are here exported from Lightroom. All you have to do is select the first image, click this Image Sequence button, and then click Open. Drag that to the timeline. You're going to get this clip mismatch warning. What that basically means is you're importing the clip at a much higher resolution than you had your sequence settings. My current sequence settings for this project are at 1080p because that's what I published to YouTube to. You want to keep existing settings, and you'll notice that your image is now zoomed in. So go to Effect Controls, double click the sequence, Effect Controls, and you can now bring this scale down to where it fills the frame. Now we have our time-lapse sequence. Common question in time-lapse sequences, can I just take video and speed it up? Let's take this exact same scene, show you the difference. So here's our time-lapse sequence with an image every 4 seconds. Here's a video from the exact same spot, sped up. To get that signature look of a time-lapse, you need it to be in images and not sped up video. If you take a look at the sign, the people walking, it is supposed to look like there's information missing. It's supposed to look jittery. When you take that same video, there's just too much information there. It looks just like sped up video instead of a true time-lapse sequence. So here are the rest of the sequences I took during this trip. What we're going to do in part 2 of this series is actually take those same clips and make them look more cinematic and interesting. If you guys like this video, give it a thumbs up. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss part 2. Really appreciate you watching, and until then, on to the next one.